everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fighting Chance Live. It is week 15, and we are here, apparently blue versus red. Team will prevail. I am Kevin Tompkins of Fighting Chance Fantasy. As always, I am here with my good friend, my compadre, my partner in arms, Gary Haddow. Gary, my friend, how are you this evening?
I am doing okay. Quite the throwback there, red versus blue. But if you know what we're talking about, my God, that was entertainment for hours and hours on end.
Absolutely, 100%. So this isn't gonna, if you listened to us last week, which certainly hope you did, if you don't, go back to our Twitter at FC Live Pod, go on YouTube, search us out, Fighting Chance Live. Last week, starting with the playoffs, we are going into more of an individual deep dive on players and not the slate as a whole. So Gary, why don't we just dive right in? Actually, you know what, before we go into it, have you listened to Taylor Swift's new album?
I listened to parts of it. One of the songs I absolutely hate because I don't really like slow music. I'm really weird about the slow music I'll listen to. And then it picked up, but I've actually seen Taylor Swift in concert. I got tickets to her for free. And my wife is a bigger Taylor Swift fan than I am, of course. But yes, I have listened to most of the album, just not all of it.
Interesting. I actually have not listened to one song of it, but I might have to dive in here and see.
What a random question if you haven't actually listened to it. Like, what? Where are you going? Like, what was my? If I was like, no, you would have been like, yeah, me too. Let's go.
Well, literally, I was looking at just album reviews and then saw that pop up. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll check it out. Broaden my horizons.
The album that starts with an R that came out I think 2 albums ago. I still think is one of my go-to albums. It's just a really good album. And I've talked to other guys that are very not Taylor Swifty, and they're like, that album just what do people call it? Slaps. Yeah, I think that's what the kids say these days.
It has sexual relations. It also it F words too. But we got off on a tangent here. Well, let's talk some football, shall we?
I like that if you say Taylor Swift, all of a sudden our viewership just starts to climb as if the people just
it went up. It went up.
All right. Let's just bounce back and forth between players rather than just me doing the whole thing. Leading the whole time solely. Sorry, we didn't talk about this before, but it's I'm worried that my throat, my voice might go out. I've been sick yet again.
You're not Frank Frank.
I get sick constantly.
You did not fracture your throat. Let's get that right.
So I'll kick it off here. I think the number one question that a lot of people have going into this week is Deontay Johnson. What the hell happened? I was not watching the game. I started getting texts in a few different group chats about how Deontay can't catch. He's going to get benched. And I was like, what are you talking about? I look at the game cast. He has a catch. I'm like, oh, no, he just made a catch. Sure enough, 3-4 plays later, benched. He's nobody knows if he's coming back. He doesn't come back. It got all the way to halftime. He's not back in. James Washington's in, and James Washington's doing pretty well, has a touchdown, and no one knows what's going on, and everybody needed him to do something.
Yep.
And he came back, but he only then had, 3 catches for, I guess, 28 yards after half. So going into half, he had 2 drops on 3 targets, and then he was done. What do you do with him this week? Let's just go with that.
I mean, this week, considering Johnson is pretty much one drop away from missing a quarter, missing a half, missing the rest of the game. At this point, we don't know. So I don't know how anybody can really trust him in a fantasy playoff lineup right now. So putting him out there after pulling him really does nothing for his confidence if you do put him back in there. So knowing that potential hook is right behind him, you'd have to think that Johnson may be pressing a little bit. Obviously, I'm not him. Don't know how that whole dynamic operates, but I think you'd be lying if you said it wouldn't be at least concerning. So if you're looking at the Pittsburgh offense as a whole with their passing game, even without Deontay Johnson, they're fine. you still have Claypool, you still have Juju, you still have James Washington, Eric Ebron, quality, distributor, Ben Roethlisberger. So I have him as a flex this week. That's about where I'd feel comfortable with him. I will say this though, if I have somebody on my bench, with say a high floor, or a very high ceiling, or a great matchup, and I'll go into a couple guys here that I would start over Deontay Johnson. I would start Jarvis Landry against the Giants. I would start who that would qualify as your high floor, your high ceiling. I like Nelson Aguilar against the Chargers tomorrow over Deontay Johnson. Or is this a good matchup for the Steelers against Cincinnati? So I like Juju over him. I also like Michael Pittman over Deontay Johnson as well. So there's just some players that, maybe you don't have all these guys in your lineup, and I think it'd be kind of disingenuous to say maybe you should have all these guys, but you should have comparable players on your bench. Hopefully you've been, stocking at least that to as a contingency. So I wouldn't have any reservations in sitting if you had comparable options to the ones I listed. But if you had to start them, I wouldn't be expecting anything more than maybe a flex, equivalent value.
I understand the risk in making this statement. I am not concerned about benching him. When you see a player get benched for fumbles, that next week, you are hesitant to start him, but you probably start him, like a la Rojo. Like we have seen it happen. We've seen it happen with various running backs. A lot of time they are taught their lesson. They get back in the game. They did lose the game, and I, again, didn't watch it. But if he had 2 drops in the first half, he only had 1 drop in the second half, just based on the scorecard or the stat line. The dude tends to have double-digit targets and tends to do well. And we're talking about going against Cincinnati, where last time he put up 6 for 116 and 1. Everything I've seen from him outside of the injuries earlier in the season, I think he's one of the most electric long-term wide receivers in the NFL. And if he can figure out the drop situation, I think he has the skill set to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy.
Yeah, I do agree with that, certainly. I am just of the mindset where I would rather be burned playing another receiver and at least knowing that player is going to play. Not that Deontay Johnson won't play. He's going to get snaps. He's going to play. But, with that looming in the back of my mind, I would rather be more safe than sorry as far as Deontay Johnson. If he drops 2 passes in his first 2 targets,
he could be done.
Right, exactly. So it's just having to mitigate that risk. And there is risk with Deontay Johnson this week.
I have a very specific this or that, but I'm going to wait on it because of the next guy that we're talking about. And I know what your answer is going to be. So my question actually would be Deontay or DJ Moore. And I know that you would have you'd probably say DJ Moore because he's guaranteed at wide receiver 21. I don't know what happens with the COVID situation. Like we've seen, Curtis Samuel was terrifying last week. Seemed like he wasn't doing anything. He just happened to have a really good second half. And I can't help but wonder how much of that's COVID. Like you missed the bye week where they install new stuff on the bye week. And DJ Moore wasn't there. He wasn't able to be there. So I'm nervous about DJ Moore, but that's my number 1 decision is DJ or Deontay.
Yeah, I'm going with DJ Moore 100% here. He's the high upside option there. Probably equal. Yeah, I'd say Moore has a better floor right now than Deontay.
Okay, I'm going to trust you. So let's move on to the next guy then. If you want to take us away with that one, if you want, I'll continue leading.
No, that's fine. As far as that, Robbie Anderson going up against Green Bay. So, I see here who will see Jair Alexander. And with that, I would just say the Panthers do move all their guys around a lot. So I don't think any one receiver for the Panthers will see, Jair way more than another guy.
Okay.
You're talking about Samuel, who's going to move all around. You're going to have DJ Moore all around. You're going to have Robbie all around. So I'm not worried in the slightest about that aspect of it, though he will probably see time on all 3 receivers. Robbie Anderson did start off the season pretty hot. Now, he's just he's a touchdown upside, but I'd say a relatively safe floor. So I have him at wide receiver 27. Gary, what are your thoughts on Robbie Anderson as far as your confidence in at least putting him in as a wide receiver, maybe a low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3?
Yeah, I think that the ranking of wide receiver 27 is perfect. It's kind of exactly where I would have him. I don't think he has the upside that we continue to think he does. I think his upside is the same as almost any wide receiver that's going to be in the top 40 or 50. The nice thing is, though, he does have a very solid floor, but it's the weirdest thing to think of Robbie Anderson as a floor wide receiver. So I think this has to do with what your matchup's looking for. I think we're all expecting this to be a potentially higher scoring game. Like Teddy has shown that this Panthers offense is good. Like they can move the ball. Mike Davis is going to play well. Obviously, they get DJ Moore back, and Curtis Samuel should still be coming on. But I couldn't put him anything above a top 24 wide receiver, but I wouldn't put him probably anything below a wide receiver 36. I still think that Jair will be on him frequently enough that they'll just go the other way. They have enough weapons, and Teddy seems to be a cerebral enough quarterback that he'll go where he needs to. Teddy's been really impressive. For fantasy, whatever, but as an actual just like NFL quarterback, he's been very impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been a good story with him coming back, but I don't think that's going to deter Carolina from drafting a younger quarterback. Maybe this draft or maybe the next draft, but I think, I think his upside is capped. I think he's fine for what he is. Yeah. And I'll always root for Teddy Bridgewater because I think he's a really good guy. And I think, his story is impressive just to come back from what he came back from, especially with that horrific injury. Yeah. I just think that Carolina can certainly improve the trajectory of their offense with the receivers they have with Christian McCaffrey to install another quarterback there. I think Bridgewater is literally the first part of his name is going to be a bridge to a better quarterback, or at least one that they deem to have higher potential in leading the Carolina Panthers in that rules offense.
In the immortal words of Simon and Garfunkel, he'll be a bridge over troubled water.
Yeah, I mean, for an incoming quarterback, it's not too troubled. I mean, look at all the weapons around. I mean, that's their defense has been better than the sum of their parts. I mean, we kind of touted them last week, and that was not the greatest. But who saw Drew Lock, just putting up video game numbers? But
right.
It is what it is.
I'm curious to see what happens when he has the full all three wide receivers and CMC, and they've got to go out and get a tight end. I mean, they just have to. They can't keep schlubbing it along with Ian Thomas. The dude's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, he's I will be coming out with a all fitness team, which is basically, the all exercise team, which is receivers that just basically run around, don't get targeted. So that's the Jalen Guyton, Ian Thomas. That's basically what Ian Thomas is right now, is just a guy that runs around, doesn't really get targeted. He gets exercise.
It's ground yards per target.
Yeah, pretty much. He's probably run about 900 yards this year and gotten targeted, 25 times?
Yeah. So moving on to another team that we're thinking is probably going to need a quarterback in 2021. There's a lot of talk about it, and that's the Detroit Lions. Nobody has any idea what they're going to do with Stafford, with their coaching hire. Rumors aplenty. Could Harbaugh be returning, or I guess coming from Michigan? Who knows? But this week, Matt Stafford at the end of the week took a hit. It seemed like his rib, thought it might be broken. It looks like it's some cartilage, just injury, whatever that means. I don't see any way that he can play besides the fact that Matt Stafford is just a beast and has played through some crazy stuff. I hope that he doesn't play. There's no reason to. You're not going to the playoffs. You're playing for literally nothing. Let Chase do his thing. But that means Chase Daniels, their backup, like perennial journeyman quarterback. Well, I wish I had the stat in front of me. Maybe you know off the top of your head, like the millions of dollars he's been paid per start. I think he's had like 9 total NFL starts, maybe at this point over 10, but he's been paid.
He's probably made like 40, 50. Yeah, exactly. 40, 50 million. It has to be.
It's crazy. It's always for teams that aren't any good. And right. He just gets paid $5 million.
That's the life, man.
So, but like all jokes aside, Marvin Jones was set up to have this amazing game against the Tennessee Titans defense, who just seem kind of like a sieve right now. And this will be a common refrain through the show. Like, what do you do with the Lions' offensive skill players? So with Marvin Jones, what are you going to do with him this week? Do you think he's startable? And I will throw it. Who would you rather have, Robbie Anderson or Marvin Jones?
I'd rather have Robbie Anderson over Marvin Jones. I think with Chase Daniel, you're looking at just depleted upside across the board with not just Marvin Jones, but DeAndre Swift as well. And I might as well just, because we're going to talk about him next, and I might as well just lump the two in together here. As far as Chase Daniel, that's pretty much all you need to say. It's going to take upside away from both guys. I mean, Marvin Jones can take a deep ball thrown by any quarterback and score, but if you're ranking them, if you're trying to sort them out based on the most probable option amongst their range of outcomes, it's going to be pretty low. So that's where I've got Marvin Jones ranked, I believe, one place below Robbie Anderson, and that's slated to go down if Stafford's not going to play. And then DeAndre Swift, since he came back from his concussion, he just has not gotten the utilization that he hasn't ramped up to the utilization that he got in week 10, where he was seeing almost 75% of the snaps, but seeing 76% of the rush attempts in that offense. He's still only playing about half of the snaps. You're still seeing some of the targets in the receiving game, but DeAndre Swift is a guy that I love among the rookie running backs. And I think what was it? We talked about the rookie running backs and who we would rather have going forward. And I believe I said Swift. And now, because I said that, apparently Cam Akers heard me and Jonathan Taylor heard me. But if they get a good offensive system there, when they clean house, I'm excited for DeAndre Swift. If they can get a guy like Robert Saleh in there, and then maybe he brings the other LaFleur over to be his offensive coordinator, run a Shanahan system. I mean, that could be awesome for DeAndre Swift. So, So that's just obviously one scenario there. But for this week, I think DeAndre Swift has got to be straddling that RB2 line, especially with Chase Daniel at quarterback, that just depletes the upside of everybody in that offense. And maybe not as much TJ Hawkinson, but certainly Marvin Jones, DeAndre Swift.
So I'm actually glad that you them together, because for me they are lumped together in that they for both Marvin Jones and DeAndre Swift. I am confidently starting both of them. I think that the Titans are going to run all over it. And like Derrick Henry has like that weird ability. It's not even weird. Like you think he will just pound the clock away, but the problem is he's too fast and he's too good. So he gets these long runs that should have turned out 3 or 4 minutes. And all of a sudden, like over the course of a game, the opposing offense is gaining potentially 5 to 10 minutes of plays. So I think that Marvin Jones is going to be hyper targeted, because I don't think that Chase Daniels will trust anybody else besides Marvin, Hawkinson, and if Swift is on the field, maybe
Amendola maybe throw in there a little bit too.
That's true. I guess that's true. So I think that Marvin Jones would get his. I wish I meant to look at it, and I just kind of got rushed doing the show doc about what Chase Daniels has kind of done in the past. I don't think it's ever been spectacular, but he was also on the Bears. Before that, he was on the Chiefs. I can't remember if I'm missing a team. Saints. And I don't think he ever had the craziest skill position players. I don't even know if he started for the Saints other than like week 17 type thing. So
he did not. I'm looking at his starts right now. He had one with Kansas City where he went 25-38, touchdown, interception, 16-28, 157 with Kansas City. He had 2 starts. I mean, I'm just trying to look at
anything that looked like it would be a top 10 QB.
No, very middling. I mean, he doesn't throw deep. His average yards per attempt is right about 6 to 7. So
the line in this game is 10.5 for the Titans, and I still think that I kind of want to take the Titans in the points. I just don't know if it's worth taking the over, which is 51.5, because I don't think that the Lions can score. But I also think that the Titans don't really care running up the score to get like 38, 40 points. So
I'd probably take the over. I'd probably take that over.
Total bloodbath. So we'll see. Well, if you're going to take it, if you would recommend that, I'm going to try and do it. And DeAndre Swift, I think that they just, last week was him coming off the concussion. I think that they'll give him more run. They'll keep him going. Like, what the hell's the point of giving AP touches at this point? But this is like the age old, like, what do you do as a fantasy owner? Because everybody's still trying to play to win at this point for the actual NFL coaches and whatnot. So I don't know.
Yep. All right. Okay. So let's go into Jacksonville here. So we want to talk a little bit about James Robinson, just to get everybody off that ledge. They see that at Baltimore, and there's a little bit of panic that goes into that. Seeing at BAL, where you think James Robinson's due for 14 carries for 17 yards and a catch. Don't do that. James Robinson, no matter the matchup, should be started across the board without hesitation. So get off that ledge. I don't actually know if this is true, but Gary wrote it and I trust him. So that he's James Robinson is currently on track to break Christian McCaffrey's record for highest percentage of running back touches as a rookie. I don't know. It might be, but he's matchup proof. So, I mean, you had no hesitations, right, Gary?
I mean, I said I think so. I think if he's not if he's not going to break it, he's going to be the number 2, which is absolutely insane as an undrafted rookie, right?
Yeah, I mean, just to get the usage and have really nobody behind him to, I think if Raquel Armstead hadn't been, with COVID and put on IR, and if Ozigbo had been more of a thing, maybe they could have siphoned some carries off him. But it's been his show, and he is running the show. When they get a quarterback, whether it's Lawrence or Fields or whatever the case may be, he's gonna take a lot of pressure off both of those guys.
So his opportunity share, which is actual touches to the running back, is at 85.4%, which is the highest in the NFL. And if I remember what I heard from JJ Zachariason say that he is the only running back to get that high, I believe, since CMC did 90% last year. I think I'm right in saying that.
Yeah, that's just absolutely wild. Yeah, don't you want volume. Volume is king in fantasy football. He gets to you regardless of the matchup.
So don't even worry about that and fading him. I don't think anybody is, but I think that a lot of times these shows around the playoffs become people talking about who they want to fade or who they're not comfortable with or who's they're kind of on the fence about. I also think sometimes you just need confirmation bias to say, no, dude, James Robinson has been the fantasy MVP this year, in my opinion, especially relative to cost.
Yeah,
he has been absolutely amazing. Like, he reminds me of what James Conner was, except for there was a reason and a logic for James Conner. There was no logic for James Robinson other than if you happen to watch him in college and you were like, he has a chance. It's awesome. I think he should probably be a low-end RB1, even in this matchup. It's funny when you think about the Baltimore Ravens rush defense, and James Robinson is not on this tier, right? But we just saw what Chubb did. Chubb got 2 touchdowns. We saw what Derrick Henry did. He had 133 and a touchdown. Again, I'm not saying that he's on those levels, but there's still a world where James Robinson does far better than we expect. And honestly, Minshew's coming back, and I think Minshew's going to have something to prove. They're not going to win this game, right? They're going to get their ass kicked, but they're still going to be able to move the ball. So,
yeah, it's definitely fair to say Minshew gives them the best opportunity to at least pass the ball. So that's got to count for something when it comes to James Robinson. I mean, James Robinson has scored in double-digit fantasy points every game this season in PPR. Has finished no lower than an RB2 every single week outside of week 1. So
crazy.
Take that to the bank. Put him in your lineup.
Anybody like me that had Divine Ozigbo and James Robinson in the offseason and was like, which one? Gonna go with Ozigbo. He's the bigger back, and then being like, fuck.
That's when you zig. You got to zig when you get Zigbo.
All right. I actually went. Well, I'll do this one. So, Jeff Wilson. So Kevin texted me this week and said, "This is pretty much this is Jeff Wilson's season. We'll just go with that. I want to know why you think this is going to be Jeff Wilson's week, why he's all of a sudden primed to blow up. Just so everyone knows, Kevin has him at RB11, and I do not hate it. I love it.
Because look at who they're playing. Now, this is the dream matchup. It didn't work out for Gio Bernard because Zach Taylor wanted to pull him after 839 attempts, and Gio Bernard hadn't fumbled since his rookie season in 2013. That's a conversation I'll have later. But Jeff Wilson against Dallas with a team that wants to run the ball, they probably won't have Mostert. It's never a good sign when your running back's going for an MRI. And then wants to play the same week. I don't think that's happening. So I think it is truly Jeff Wilson's season here in week 15. When in week 7, when Mostert was out, Wilson saw 56% of the snaps, 17 for 112, and then saw 3 targets out of the backfield. I mean, you gotta love when you can pin a San Francisco backfield down to one back. Right now it's Jeff Wilson, and this is a prime matchup. And he was out on waivers in most leagues going into this week too. So if you got him, he's a guy where it's tough to start a guy off of waivers in week 15, barring just a massive injury. And not that Mostert's injury isn't massive, but this is something you rarely see in fantasy. So I have no problems picking up Jeff Wilson off of waivers and immediately putting him in as my RB2 with the upside of an overall RB1 on the week.
And I completely agree with everything. I think that if you liked Raheem Mostert, I think the only difference with them is their top end speed. I think that Jeff Wilson's probably a tougher runner, probably in the first 10 to 20 yards, but Raheem Mostert has that top end speed where you can just literally take the top off defense. I think he has the fastest speed on the season, just so people know, like faster than Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Against the Jets on that 80-yard touchdown, first play of the game. It was amazing. I also think that they're going to be using Jeff Wilson a lot, specifically because, this guy was on their practice squad. He's very young. I think he's going to be their future, and why not just give him a little bit more run? They like to share the load a little bit, but I expect that Tevin Coleman I hope he's played his last snap. He probably hasn't, but I hope. I can't wait for them to cut him. And then who knows if they're going to bring back Jet McKinnon, even if his contract isn't as bad as it originally was back in the day. So I'm all aboard this. I think Jeff Wilson's going to be awesome this week. And in terms of PPR, like even if he doesn't get a ton of touches, which sometimes, we see he's very similar to Mostert last year. Mostert got very low touches, but was very efficient with them, but then just started getting touchdown after touchdown and really picked up going into the playoffs. He's a younger, like poor man's version of Raheem Mostert. I really think this. And so I'm excited for this coming week. They just had a pretty intense stretch with the Rams, Buffalo, and Washington, and now they get Dallas. Let Kyle Shanahan get back to his run game and just go wild and have totally. I am starting Wilson. I picked him up off waivers, and I am starting him over Nyheim Hines, over Duke Johnson, but I don't really care about that. So perfect. I'm all in.
Yep, 100%. Jeff Wilson season is here in week 15.
It's how that New England game all over, 17-1, 12-3.
Yeah, every time he's gotten into the game, too, for an extended run, he's just been awesome. So if the 49ers have had just all these backs that could probably start for 3/4 of the teams in the NFL, just an embarrassment of riches. I mean, they had Salvon Ahmed, too, that was just bouncing around on their practice squad till Miami picked them up, too. So, just crazy.
Wow. That's so crazy. Should we move on to quarterbacks?
Yeah, let's go over to Tom Brady here. Tom Brady at Atlanta. So this is their first matchup against Atlanta too. It's kind of a funny scheduling quirk here. They play Atlanta in week 15, also week 17. So they get both of those divisional matchups in a 3-game stretch, and then get a beautiful cream filling in the Detroit Lions to sandwiched around those Atlanta matchups. I think Brady is absolutely money in this matchup at Atlanta. I don't think there's really any impediment toward him being a top 12 quarterback right now. If you hedged your bet and you played your Buccaneers card going into drafts and you grab Brady, you grab Evans, or grab one of him or Godwin or Antonio Brown, you're just banking on those Brady blow up games. And really, we haven't gotten them to an extent, but Tom Brady, I would say, is as safe as it comes in Atlanta's the matchup that you want to see going into the fantasy playoffs, where you can just start him confidently. I believe I have him at quarterback 11. I know he's right around that quarterback one fringe, but I think he has upside for more. And then also Ronald Jones is placed on the COVID list, so that could also skew that more toward the passing game as well. Likely they're just going to go with Leonard Fournette. I know he was a healthy scratch last week. They might not have any choice to play him unless they just feel like not playing him and saying whatever and give run to LaShawn McCoy or whatever they want to do. I don't know if it really
McCoy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think Tom Brady's just a locked in QB1 this week and, next 2 weeks, really.
I don't have the same confidence you do. QB1, I think he's a fringe QB1. He's in that 10 to 14 range for me because last week you would have thought that was his week, right? But 196 and 2, like that's very strange. It's not as if Rojo went off. It's not as if McCoy went off. Like, I don't understand. He should have had a better matchup. Maybe that was just a weird game, and the Vikings are better than I think they were. I actually thought the Vikings were going to win that game, but I also don't think the Vikings were that great. I'm concerned that are the Falcons going to be able to put up enough of a fight to force Brady to stay in it? Again, I guess you're probably starting him, but I would rather start Tannehill over him. I would debate on Jalen Hurts over him. I know we're going to talk about him later. Like, there are plays against not softer defenses because it's Atlanta, but I don't know.
Again, there's better plays. I understand that. That's, I have him and Hurts are almost interchangeable for me, and we'll talk about him in a second. I certainly have Tannehill in my top 5. I have Justin Herbert at 8. I have Taysom Hill at 9 going up against Kansas City. So, there are matchups that I like there. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that benefit this week from just absolutely fantastic matchups. I mean, across the board. And then, obviously Mahomes has New Orleans, Russell Wilson has at Washington, Josh Allen. So yeah, it's not as much of a detriment to Brady being in that fringe. It's really just the fantastic quarterbacks ahead of him and the matchups that just happen to push Brady down a little bit here. In any given week, if you take out half of those, he's probably a QB6. But right now, I think I have him at 10 or 11. So yeah, I think Tom Brady's a fine start this week, but I understand.
Man, Taysom Hill versus Tom Brady. I don't know if I could do that. I think I would probably still be running Brady, but I don't know. I think it's a perfect segue into the running quarterbacks. But one last thing I just want to say, since week 9, so that's only 5 weeks because there was a bye in there, Brady has thrown 7 interceptions. Yep. That is wild, and I will be shocked if he does not throw another one. Atlanta has some fast defensive players. So
yeah, I saw that too. I was going to say something about that, but that could be just a product of the offense with Bruce Arians. So it is what it is. But I'm not sure he'll probably throw a pick or two this game, but I think he's going to have enough stats to kind of buoy him this week.
Fair enough. All right. Shall we move on to the running quarterbacks?
Yeah, the Konami code, right?
What do you do with Jalen Hurts? It's your semis. Like, if you have you're 1 win away from your championship, and you're starting a guy who's had his first. It would be like starting Taysom Hill his first week, or I guess the second week. Like, I don't know. And the thing that gives me confidence is that it was the Saints defense and Jalen Hurts was able to do this. And my concern normally would be, well, Arizona has Kyler. They're used to practicing against a mobile quarterback that's going to give them a leg up. But I mean, the Saints had Taysom Hill. Like, they were used to practicing against that. So you would think that would have been, I don't know. What do you think here?
I think Jalen Hurts with just the rushing ability alone is worth the quarterback one fringe. yes, Jalen Hurts has to find himself throwing the ball a little bit, and I understand that he's got to work into a rhythm and get his bearings. But he could absolutely run the ball against Arizona. They've given up the sixth most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks. So just that, and if he can just be average, if he could throw for 200 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns, and then maybe get one on the ground with 70, 80 yards rushing. I mean, he rushed the ball, 13 times, I believe. So, I mean,
it was 18. It's crazy.
And he didn't get sacked either. That's the crazy thing. I mean, as much as we've talked about Carson Wentz just absolutely laying down for, defenders, the Olay on their offensive line, he didn't get sacked once, and the mobility is going to help with that. So, granted, Jalen Hurts, that's not going to happen every week. He's going to get sacked. It's football. It is what it is. So that could be just the ultimate anomaly, but he certainly has the evasiveness to avoid some of those sacks. I like Jalen Hurts here as a fringy quarterback, one with upside. I mean, if he decides to just air it out a little bit, add that in with the rushing work, and you've got something that's going to play here.
I think the thing that we didn't talk about, which is probably the most impressive thing, is that he got Alshon Jeffrey to be a little bit relevant again. Alshon had a touchdown. He hasn't done anything all season. I was shocked by that.
Yeah,
hey, did they call the right player?
Yeah, lots of guys have touchdowns, but here we are. But it's
touchdown. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, that's my pinpoint analysis of the week.
So, would you rather have? I'm assuming they're in the same tier, right? Like, obviously, rankings aren't just linear; they're kind of tier based. Would you rather start Brady or Hurts this week? Like, you have to pick one. Let's just assume I have this decision in a league.
If you have both, it basically comes down to your roster construction. If you just need massive upside, I would go Jalen Hurts. If you Brady is a floor play.
Okay, I like it. I'm going for the massive upside, so let's do it.
Let's rock.
So, fun fact, I didn't realize even when I go through the schedules and I look at rankings and I try to see players. I've been doing the show doc the last 2 weeks, and I just try to see players that I think, for where they're being ranked and their matchups, like who has difficult matchups and who might people be, concerned about, for lack of a better term, quote unquote concerned. And I actually put Kyler Murray here, beside Jalen Hurts. Not intentional. I think we should insert the Spider-Man meme, and can we do it? Can you here? You?
I didn't know which way. Yeah.
Great. There we go.
We've been podcasting for 37 episodes, and I still can't get the directional stuff right.
No idea. I touch my hair a lot, and I always have to think, okay, which side? Where am I combing my hair? Which way? Okay. So Kyler Murray has been pretty much a fantasy stud. I think everybody would agree with that. He did hit a little bit of a wall mid-season. That's because he peaked mid-season and was just going absolutely bananas. But then they kind of went on this slide starting pretty much after week 10, maybe with week 10 against Buffalo. He only threw for 1 touchdown, but that was the Hail Mary that got him that touchdown. The problem is he also ran for 2 that week. But since then, he has not rushed for a touchdown. Actually, his rushes have been down to 5.55. This past week was 13. He hurt his shoulder, and it seemed like, there were questions of whether or not he was even going to play some weeks, but he kept playing. But their offense did seem off. I don't really know what was going on there, but against the Giants, who I thought the Giants would be able to beat them because they seemed to be going on a tear, they obviously showed back up, even though that's probably a lot of that was on the Cardinals defense. If you guys haven't looked at Hassan Reddick's stats, dude had, I believe, 5 sacks, 5 sacks, a fumble recovery, and he might have even had an interception. It was just insane.
That's a season.
It completely. It was like a season. I think in one of my leagues, he got 32 points as an IDP.
Wow.
So now we're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against Jalen Hurts. It's going to be really interesting watching these guys watch each other on the field. maybe I overhype how difficult I think that the Eagles defense is, but the Eagles defensive front is what is very difficult. They are really freaking good. I'm wondering if they're going to be able to contain Kyler, so he's not going to be able to run. They're going to force him to throw, and potentially you have Darius Slay on DeAndre Hopkins. Not to say that Slay is still a shutdown corner, but he's a pretty damn good corner. With all that being said, do you have any hesitation to starting Kyler?
You know what? I don't. We saw him run the ball almost 3 times as much as, almost as much as he did the previous 3 weeks. He had 13 carries, as opposed to what you just said, 5, 5, and 5 the last 3 weeks previous. So, I think that's certainly a feather in his cap of getting right. So, and watching that game, he looked pretty good running the ball. He wasn't slower than normal, but we know with his shoulder, it's going to come down to passing the ball. And he at least looked in sync with DeAndre Hopkins. I believe it was 9 catches and over 100 yards. So not concerned there. I'm concerned about him distributing the ball to everybody else because nobody else really did anything outside of the Dan Arnold touchdown. And I'm not going to start advocating for the Dan Arnold experience. Miss me with Arizona Cardinals tight ends. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But I will say this. Like I said, Murray was running the ball 13 times, and then only Matt Ryan has scored fewer fantasy points versus expectation than Murray the last 4 weeks. So there is definitely regression coming back for Kyler Murray. So I'm confident in starting him. I bumped him up to QB7. I think he's going to have a pretty good week this week. I think people that are out on him are going to be a little bit mistaken. I don't think you can give up on Kyler Murray. He's not going to be Kyler Murray, or he has the upside to be the Kyler Murray of weeks 1 through 10. So his shoulder is probably ailing him a little bit, but I think seeing what he did last week and building on that's going to give him, that spring to get back into what he was doing in the first almost dozen weeks.
Who do you think wins this game?
They're going to tie.
That would be so crazy if it was just and then overtime is just runs by Kyler and runs by Jalen.
I will snippet this video clip when they do tie, and I will get 3 likes on it. No, geez, I don't know. This is a tough one to pick, and I haven't looked at anything on Vegas, but I would probably take the Cardinals here.
Yeah, I haven't looked at anything. I'm just thinking. I mean, I think it'll be the Cardinals, but it's or probably favored. It's just the fact that man, the Eagles just beat the Saints in relatively convincing fashion. I mean, they came back and they got at least a little bit close, but it was 17-0 at one point. That was wild. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the spread at one point was going into the game was, I think, -8, -8.5 for the Saints. It was just, it was wild. So I'm excited to see this game. I'm hoping that the Cardinals lose, but that's just because I hate them. And yeah, I think we can move on from this. Oh, yeah. The only reason I, again, wanted to insert Kyler, I think that there's hesitation for some people. I think everybody's probably starting him, but you might have been a little concerned. Again, this was kind of a nudge of, I think he's going to do well this week. Cautiously optimistic. I agree with Kevin around QB7. Yeah,
for real. This is a guy here that we're going to talk about. Gary's already smiling because he's waiting for the shoe to drop here. But Cole Kmet for the Chicago Bears. Now, my history of Chicago Bears players, we know about Mitch Trubisky. I've talked up David Montgomery, Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson. You'd think they were some juggernaut offense, but no. If we're talking about Cole Kmet, we're talking about a guy that has absolutely surpassed Jimmy Graham. Cole Kmet, first of his name, has seen the 7th most targets the last 2 weeks. He's also been the 3rd highest yak yards after catch, but with a 2.7 yard ADOT. So right now he is catch and rumble Cole Kmet. So, and I will say this, he is absolutely, definitively the number 2 target on the Chicago Bears behind Allen Robinson. He has seen a 22% target share, well over almost doubling Mooney, doubling Montgomery, anybody else on that offense. So I believe Robinson has a 29% target share. Cole Kmet is absolutely a piece of this offense that you can actually invest in redraft, not just dynasty, not just a stash. So with that kind of surrounding data and the question marks that surround the position in fantasy, the only reason Cole Kmet isn't higher than tight end 7 for me is just because of the team he plays on and the quarterback that's throwing in the ball. If he played on any more competent offense, he could absolutely reach top 5 right now. And these are guys that you want to target for 2021. We saw what Mark Andrews did with a little bit of playing time in 2018 and what he turned that into in 2019. Now, I'm not saying Cole Kmet is going to be your, tight end 4 in 2021, but he absolutely has that kind of ceiling. If he can get an offensive environment around him that's going to design more for him. Right now, that offense is not designed for a tight end. It's designed around one read and Allen Robinson and trudging the ball up the middle, and then random carries up the middle of Cordero Patterson. So, at least for 2020 right now, if you've got him, if you picked him up, you got to start him. I mean, he has much more upside than all the guys that are around him. The Gronkowskis of the world, the Logan Thomases, the Eric Ebrons, the Dalton Schultzes. I would start Kmet over all of them without question.
Man, first drafted tight end by a lot, by like almost 2 rounds. Yeah, that's wild. In the actual NFL draft. You dropped some stats that I'm glad that I got to type this out because I did not know those stats about. I didn't even realize he had a 22% target share. Like that's impressive.
Yeah, that last 2 weeks, he's had 7 targets in each game.
Just so weird when you see like 7 targets, 4 catches for 40 or 50 yards and possibly a touchdown, and that makes you this high. But I guess it's the tight end landscape. Man, God, I just want them to get a good quarterback. Like, don't get rid of Allen Robinson unless you're not getting a good quarterback. So
here's a dark horse, by the way. I think could be the Chicago Bears quarterback next year, Matt Ryan.
Maybe
I could see it. I could see them going down the veteran well. I don't think they won't have a shot at Stafford. I think they got a shot at Matt Ryan.
So my understanding is that they are very, very in over the cap already. So they're going to be making a lot of hard choices to see what they want to do. I have no idea what that Foles contract looks like if they cut him because he did the 4 for 80? No, 4 for 60, something like that. 4 for 40, I think. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, they're definitely going to be a fun team to watch, and hopefully they're not going to have Matt Nagy anymore. They're going to move on to a different coach because they've just sputtered under him. So the last thing about Cole Kmet, based on Kevin's ranking, so he has Kmet at 7, then he has Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Logan Thomas, Rob Gronkowski, Eric Ebron, Irv Smith, Dalton Schultz. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to personally would be starting Henry, Logan Thomas for sure over him. Evan Ingram, if Daniel Jones was playing, would be over him. Gronk is probably my biggest question mark. I want to start him because it's Atlanta, but also he hasn't really done enough to warrant that. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense. He's for sure a top 10 for me, especially after everything you just said. So I hope that people are paying attention to him and that people aren't just like, Cole Kmet, that dude's just a rookie. Like, no big deal. Like, no, look at the numbers. It pans out. So,
yeah, the fact that he has this much of a share in the offense this early, that bodes well for tight end breakouts. That bodes well for future prospects at the position. So if you've got him in Dynasty, hold on to him because you're possibly getting a top 6 option for the next 6, 7, 8 years here. And Kmet, I believe, is still only 22, but yeah, absolute dynasty hold and just ride him out. I think in redraft. I could understand maybe Hunter Henry or even Evan Ingram, but after that, I think there's it starts getting kind of thin at tight end where you really, really have to make a case for somebody and kind of be tunneled into starting them over Kmet.
So I do want to ask about I unintentionally did it again where the next tight end I want to talk about is Irv Smith Jr. You have Irv Smith as your tight end 14. These two are playing against each other. It's Bears versus the Vikings. I want to know why you have him so low compared to Cole Kmet. Is it just because the Bears defense, or is it just because the numbers don't actually play out as well as I think they do in my head and I just have recency bias?
Well, really, it's because we don't know if Kyle Rudolph is going to play. If he doesn't play, then I'm going to bump Irv Smith up. But there is at least a question of whether Kyle Rudolph will play. So that's kind of baked into my rankings right now. But
Okay.
I think Irv Smith can absolutely be a top 10 play this week. I mean, close to that last week when he scored. He was tight end 3. No, he wasn't tight end 3. I'm sorry. He was tight end 4 in PPR last week. He had a touchdown 4 for 63. Granted, it's a low bar with tight ends, so it is what it is. But at this point, we're starting any Vikings tight end that has the job to himself. You're not starting either when both guys are healthy. So it's just going to siphon off and take away from each other. But, we started Kyle Rudolph, and I was a Kyle Rudolph honk for the last few weeks where then he got hurt. Now it's Irv Smith. So you got the higher upside option of the two. This is something we've been waiting for, and I was on him all offseason hoping, this is pre-Justin Jefferson breakout. So it is what it is. They've got a number 2 target, and Irv Smith is fantastic and can absolutely be a great option in this offense with Thielen and Jefferson. It's just he doesn't have the job to himself, but when he does, like we saw last week at Tampa Bay, which was a tough matchup, he certainly produced. He caught all 4 of his targets. So going up at home against Chicago, where they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit, and that should be that's actually going to be a fun game. I'm actually going to watch that game because Green Bay plays on Saturday. I think Irv Smith can absolutely be a top 10 tight end if he has the job if Kyle Rudolph isn't playing.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting target for 2021. Who knows if Kyle Rudolph will be back, and that offense is just, with Jefferson and Thielen and Cook, like no matter what, the sky's the limit with what they can do. So it will be fun to see. I agree. I actually kind of put him in here because I felt like he was too low. But again, I don't know. He always feels like he has more targets than he does. But I honestly think it's just bias because I wanted him to be something. And so every time I see 84 make a catch, I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing that that has to be like 11 targets. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're going to move on to one of the stranger things, but this is the second to last week of the season for fantasy. And we got to talk some defense here. I think one of the most confusing plays this week is the Washington defense. I actually wanted to put Chris Carson and Russell Wilson in, but I thought that's just ridiculous. You're never benching either of them, despite the fact that I put Kyler in there. I want to know, let's just start with just the basic question. Are you willing to start the Washington defense against the Hawks?
It's a tough proposition, knowing what Seattle can do. Granted, they haven't done that great lately as far as Seattle, but I'm still not willing to ride that wave. I think they're a fringy, option at defense. If you're going to play a defense, I think there's plenty of other matchups, especially options you could pick up off the waivers, like Cleveland at the Giants, who possibly might get Colt McCoy. And then you're looking at other matchups like the Titans versus Detroit and Chase Daniel. Granted, Titans. And then probably I would say Chicago is a solid matchup at Minnesota. I think they can at least pressure Kirk Cousins a bit. So I have those teams over Washington. I just with the upside that Seattle poses week to week, you don't want to pick the wrong week for Seattle to just put up a 40 spot and just completely nullify Washington. As good as their front has been, because they have been, but it's not a matchup that I want to really risk.
Fair enough. So then on the flip side of that, are you in any way fading any Seahawks because of the matchup?
I mean, maybe Carson a little bit, but I'm not. I'm still starting Carson if I have him. It's just you have to temper expectations. That's not a guy you really want to just go off the reservation and sit because of that vaunted Washington front line. I think that might be a little too over the line, but I think Chris Carson is I believe I have him as a lower end RB2. Okay, I have a higher RB2. It's higher than I thought he would be. Even though I ranked him, so what the hell am I doing? But
I agree with him as a high end RB2. Actually, I think that he's going to catch enough balls that if Kyle Fuller and I can't think of the other cornerback's name are able to do anything to Lockett and DK, which I don't know if anyone can to DK, that they'll use Carson more. And I think that they have enough. If you look at last week, Swain, even against the Jets, like Swain caught a touchdown. I believe David Moore caught a touchdown. Like death by 1,000 touchdowns is Russell Wilson's kind of motto. And I think that Chris Carson will just get his as things go. So, yeah, I'm not fading anybody, but I think it's worth the discussion just to see. But Washington's defense, man, I think they're third in defensive DVOA, if I remember that correctly, and they are just crushing it. It's going to be interesting to see what they do next year. For anybody that doesn't know, I believe that their defensive line has 4 first-rounders. I think it's Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, who might have been a second-rounder now that I say that, Chase Young, and I can't think who the third is, but then Ryan Kerrigan's there backing him. Like, their front seven is monstrous. It's insane. So they're going to be a fun to watch.
And I want to say something too. And I'm actually surprised you didn't mention him with guys you were fading, was Tyler Lockett. I have him at wide receiver 31 this week. Ever since that 200-yard game that he had at week 7 where he got 20 targets, he hasn't had a game over 67 receiving yards. I believe he has one wide receiver 2 finish in the last 7 weeks. Other than that, he's been wide receiver 3 once. Other than that, he's been in the 40s and 50s. So right now, it's DK Metcalf is the wide receiver 1 there, and clearly,
very clearly. I didn't even know what to do with Lockett in keeper leagues. I mean,
you have to start him.
He's just so boom or bust. Like, do you keep him? Like, I don't know. DK is. He's just so fun. I hate that he's on the Seahawks, though, but he's so fun to watch. He's so good. And I love the fact that Travis Kelce is probably going to beat him in total yards on the season.
Yeah, he's good or something, I heard. He's no Tanyan, but who is?
That was the funniest tweet ever. So the other one, and it's just the matchup, Saints D versus Chiefs D. They're going up against each other. And I think a lot of people have been riding the Saints D, much to their chagrin from last week when they put up negative points for me. The Chiefs D has been pretty good. Kevin has a Chiefs D at defense 15. Is that the right way to say it? And the Saints at 24th. Will you start either of them this week?
Saints, no. Chiefs, I have it a couple leagues and kind of forced into starting them. But, you still have upside in the Chiefs because they can outscore anybody. I don't care who they're playing. So if a team has to play catch up, that's where you make your money right there. If you're playing the Chiefs, that's the thesis of the play is hope the Chiefs can score 30 points, get up by 2 touchdowns, make the other team throw, and capitalize off of that with sacks, turnovers, the possibility of a special teams touchdown, which they certainly have electric guys back there to capitalize on that. So the Saints is a non-starter for me, not even considering that, just because we know what Patrick Mahomes can do. I mean, you can kind of the games that he had against the game they had against Miami where he threw those picks, you can kind of throw that out the window. You're going to get that maybe once a season. So I'm just going to throw that out the window, but the Chiefs D, they're in play for me.
It is hard to sit the Saints D. I'm debating on this with my buddy right now. And if we don't get the Browns on waivers, which we're going to run in 30 minutes, then the debate becomes the Saints or the Titans. And it's tough just because the Titans defense is not good. You're just playing hoping that Chase Daniels is incompetent versus do you just roll with the Saints who, short of this one game, they have played good offenses. Maybe not they've played amazing offenses. Although as soon as I just open up their scores for the year, I now see that they put up a -8 against the Packers. So I'm just going to move on and we'll just not worry about it. So they're getting dropped. But yeah, if Browns are available, if you for some reason have them available. Just know they play the Jets next week also. So they are by far the number one pickup. I think that's it. We finished under an hour for the first time ever.
I know, right? It's what a world we live in, man. But yeah, so that's week 15. If you have any questions for your start and sits, send them on over to us at KTompkinsII at Gary Hadda 1. For those of you living under a rock, we do host Fighting Chance Kickoff every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So we are going to be up with you setting your lineups. When the inactives come out, we will announce those, and we'll be answering your start and sit questions. So send them on over to us. I'll be putting out a tweet or a fleet or whatever the kids call it, asking for everything there. So, Gary, you have anything else to add before we bounce out of here?
No, good luck with everybody in whatever league you're still playing in, and join us on Sunday. Start and do some start-sit decisions and whatnot. And man, it's that time of year. It's about to be Christmas. It's wild. So it's just,
I know, right?
I hope everybody's safe and everything too. It's a crazy time right now.
I got that Santa hat back there. I'll be wearing that on Sunday. I gotta get a little festive here. Gotta do it.
Yeah, you'll probably have to do that. What is next week? Are we gonna do a show Christmas on the 23rd?
Like on the top? Yeah, why not?
That's week 16, right? I always forget that Christmas is usually right before week 16.
Yeah, Christmas on Friday, so I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't at least show our faces on Wednesday, right?
Totally. And Go Pack Go. Hey, thanks, man. Am I showing that right now?
Yeah, that's my good friend Audrey. Love her. She's fantastic. So yeah, we'll absolutely be around. I promise on the eve of Christmas. So we will be around for week 16 to hopefully help you guys win a championship. But for tonight, I am Kevin Tompkins. Again, we are both of fightingchancefantasy.com. And for Gary Hadda, who is apparently shaking everything in God's creation. I can see it on the screen. He is trembling in anticipation for his waiver run in 25 minutes. But yeah, for Gary Hadda, I'm Kevin Tompkins. Have a great night, everybody, and good luck in week 15.
See you guys.